The first question that I thought up of was how does the cultural context during which Othello was written affect which race Othello truly is? And so through some research, I started discovering, learning more about this question because it's also kind of puzzled the minds of a lot of scholars. And so we now know the term more to mean Islamic and Arabic inhabitants that lived in Spain and North Africa. But back in the 1600s, when the play was written, the word Moor referred to many different regions and groups of Africans. So it can't be inferred which group of Africans it is. It also can't be inferred whether he's truly light-skinned or dark-skinned. There are some references to his skin tone as being darker than Europeans, but his exact race cannot be inferred. What do you think, Jude?
I agree.
Okay.
Alright, so I had the psychoanalytical perspective, and I had the question, is Othello a narcissist? And I thought he was because he's aware of his reputation, and he's already given an image to live up to, and him trying to live up to his standards makes him less aware of rational choices. And I also believe that his wife Desdemona, for him, could be considered like a trophy wife, because when he smothered her, it was like him saying, if I can't have her, then no one can have her. So Desdemona was another support for him to keep up his reputation, and I believe overall Othello was narcissistic.
I also believe that he was pretty narcissistic because although he did it in a kind of just way, he sometimes took it too far, but throughout the play he tried to gain the trust and favor of a lot of the royals, such as the Duke and the curly-haired guy, Lodovico, the curly-haired guy from Italy. He tried to win over their favor and their respect by always talking about how he was a well-respected general, he had done a lot for their state and for their country, and so for that he deserved to be treated in a high manner and everything told him the truth about him. And as he says, not loving, it wasn't that he didn't love enough, it's that he loved too much. So I guess we can go on to my next question. How does the age in which Shakespeare was brought up affect the plot of Othello? So through some more research, I also found out that the story of Othello was actually taken by a story written in 1565 by Giovanni Battista Giraldi Cinzio, and it was actually an Italian prose tale. It's very similar, but Shakespeare added some stuff, and I actually think that through looking at the things that he added it because he was affected by the type of literature that Shakespeare grew up with and was around this time, and also just the cultural context of what was going on in England at that time. Because since Shakespeare grew up in a time of conflict and war, he added a backdrop of military struggle to the plot of the story. Also, Elizabethan literature also highly featured archetypes and conflicting protagonists and antagonists. So Shakespeare increased Iago's role to be the archvillain and added Roderigo and Brabantio's characters to the plot.
Interesting. My question was, what is the relationship between love and hate to Othello? And I thought love blinded Othello to the point where he becomes enraged, and I thought love was an indirect factor to him hating other people in the end. I suppose that if Othello didn't love anyone and he was just more, self-controlled, then he wouldn't have had rage or any other emotions that would have inflicted damage on other people in the end. And I felt that love causes Othello to feel jealous and uncertain, which makes him very unstable character.
Jared says he's here. So, for love versus hate, I'd say that I said, Othello was only criticized himself of loving too much, which I think caused him to blind some of his things, since he wanted that love to be returned. And when he began to think that Desdemona didn't love him back, and that Cassio was plotting to kind of bring his downfall to his relationship with Desdemona, he quickly turned all those emotions of love into emotions of hate. So I guess we could talk about some of the cultural critic questions. So one of the questions is, who are the people who have power in this text? what is their source of their power, how do they hold on to their power, and how is their power expressed. I definitely say that Iago, at first, like, it's Othello that has a lot of power. Like, he has the power of, like, at first they accuse him of marrying Desdemona, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, a Moor is marrying one of the most sought after women. But then, what's up, Jared? But then he makes this point by talking about, like, how he's a great soldier. But then he loses that power to Iago because Iago begins to play off his love and his passion for being well known, and like needs the love back, and so he got the power over Othello.
In my opinion, the person with the most power in the text was the Duke, because he got his source of power from probably generations of family that had power before him, so it was like I guess old power. But the Duke was able to reach like compromises through negotiations rather than just having a reputation of being powerful like Othello was. And I guess the Duke was more logical in the approaches versus the other characters that were just spurred on by very quick decisions like made on whims. And when what's his name? The father of Desdemona accused or told that Othello should not, like, Othello loving his daughter was a crime, and Othello was trying to argue back with a soliloquy. The Duke was truly the only one that had the power to say Othello like shouldn't die. Like, he's been a brave soldier. Like I'll make the decision, and then the father Desdemona had to agree with him. So I felt that the Duke was the most powerful, although he didn't have as big of a part in the story.
And I think that Iago got his power through manipulation.
Alright, so we'll move on to the next question. How would the story be different if it were told from the perspective of a minor character? Let's just say Rodrigo. We saw it in the eyes of him. It would have just been like deception and just like grievance and like lust, basically, because he didn't get anything he wanted and he got stabbed. Like, Iago just basically just betrayed him, you know, said that he would get Desdemona for him, kill Othello so Rodrigo could get her. That obviously wasn't the case, you know. It would have been so different. Like, say it was in the eyes of Cassio, because when I looked at it, I didn't really see him that much throughout the play. They were just talking about him mostly. They should have approached him. Like, they saw the handkerchief when he was talking to the prostitute, and they just assumed, like, oh wow, he has this, that means that she must have given it to him. So it's just all these things that Othello didn't see, that if he saw in the eyes of these people, he would have understood what was actually going on and didn't just assume.
I also think it would have been interesting to have it in the eyes of Rodrigo, because then it probably would have like justified a lot of the reasons why like he started the fight with like Cassio, because then we would like be able to see his thoughts and like see his love for Desdemona, and like through the eyes of like Iago and Othello, like we think that Rodrigo's crazy because he's just constantly asking Iago about Desdemona and like how it's going and like what he should do next.
He's just blinded by love.
Yeah, blinded by love. And so he would have like justified his means if we had known his thoughts and not seemed as like crazy or obsessed.
I thought it'd be also interesting if Desdemona had a bigger role in the story, except just counterpart to Othello's, like, I guess, spouse, because Desdemona isn't given as big of a voice because she's a female in a society where it's dominated by male power. And I felt that if Desdemona, like, I just wanted to see her thoughts, like if she knew she was going to be killed, like if she already had like thoughts that Othello thought she was cheating on him, and how she would have approached the situation, because it's partly Desdemona's fault too, because a husband and wife, or I guess in that type of relationship, I guess she should have approached him as soon as she thought Othello suspected her, and then maybe she wouldn't have died in that. I don't know.
Yeah, a thing adding on that, like when Othello told her what he thought, she just went along with it. She didn't like refute anything or say anything like, no, I didn't do this. She just agreed with it. She's like, okay, if you think this, then go right ahead. And then he kills her and then kills himself.
Yeah. Do you want to do one more question?
Besides Othello, do you think any other characters were very irrational, and why were they irrational?
I definitely think that Rodrigo was very irrational because he like very easily got Iago to do whatever he wanted. Like he basically made him like his minion and got him to do like anything at his whim. Like he sold off his lands to save money. He got in a fight with Cassio when Rodrigo told him to. He just really used his like jealousy and love against him because he was very jealous of Cassio and Othello and like very much in love with Desdemona. So I think that those two things made him irrational and made it easy to be manipulative.
Yeah, not so much irrational, I think, but like selfish is like the word that I look at it. Basically, I think everybody in this is selfish, mostly. Like Iago's wife, gives the handkerchief without even thinking anything. Like she's just a pawn in this, but she obviously knew, like, why would she give that to her husband, knowing it was on Desdemona's bed and that. And then Iago, just because he doesn't get the promotion doesn't mean you have to go out and like kill people and then ruin their lives. It's just all for self-gain and esteem, I guess, self-confidence.
I guess adding on to the selfish part, definitely Brabantio. I think that was the name of Desdemona's dad. Yeah. I know it's hard for like a dad to see like his daughter go off with another man, but to the point where he tries to get the partner of Desdemona to be like even killed or punished, I think that's going too far. And Desdemona was legally an adult, so I mean she should like respect her opinions more. But yeah. Next question.
Sure.
We'll make this last question.
Okay. Okay. Which groups would be offended by the way the story is told? How? Some like women and feminists might be a little bit offended because of the way that Desdemona didn't really have much power and like the relationship of choosing her suitor and then power in the relationship. I agree with what June said about Brabantio, but I also understand like the times that was made in that like the father and the family had a lot of influence in deciding who her suitor ended up to be, and also there was like a very long process of getting married, and a lot of times it started at birth, and nowadays it's very different from married. It's definitely a lot of the girl's choice, and so if this happened in modern day, many women would be mad, and also just thinking about that's what the times were back then. Some women would be mad.
Yeah, and also like the Muslim population and the African American population, because basically all we hear is like you more, like that more, and all that. It's kind of like a word that I'm not gonna say, but it's a race. Yeah, but
that's the way they kind of.
Yeah.
When they say more, they go more.
Yeah. It's their form of just saying, we don't like you, we don't like your race, your ethnicity, just all your cultural values, So when they look at this, they're like, that's what I follow, so, don't.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. Like, definitely some of the minority groups like could feel that they're underrepresented, as well as they could feel that there's a lot of like hatred. Like, if you're not part of the status quo, then you don't belong. Especially like the first half of Othello. But yeah.
Right.